The early morning sun was already painting the Shanghai skyline in warm gold when Xiao Zhan arrived on set for the third week of filming his latest historical romance epic. The mood had been light until a flurry of whispers began to ripple through the crew.
Hello.
A black luxury
马上就要见面
SUV
了。
had just pulled up outside
准备好了？
the studio gates, its tinted windows reflecting the bustle of the film lot. Inside, director Chen glanced at his assistant, eyebrows furrowed. "Who's that? We're not expecting anyone." Moments later, the door opened, and out stepped Shu Kai, tall, confident, dressed in casual black but with the kind of magnetic presence that made heads turn instantly. The crew froze. Shu Kai wasn't part of the cast. He wasn't even in talks for the project. His sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the production floor. Xiao Zhan, who had been reviewing his lines in the corner, looked up and for a split second, his usually composed expression faltered. It was the briefest flash of surprise, but enough for those nearby to notice. Shu Kai walked straight through the maze of cables, props, and camera rigs, ignoring the curious stares. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said with a slight smile, voice calm but carrying an undertone of mischief. The director looked unsure. "Well, this is unexpected. I was nearby," Shu Kai explained casually, though no one believed it. "Thought I'd drop by and see how an old friend is doing." His eyes flicked to Xiao Zhan. That old friend line was like striking a match near gasoline. The unspoken history between them, rumored late-night meetups, mysteriously similar social media posts, an unconfirmed but persistent rumor of a private dinner months ago was the stuff of fan forum legend. The atmosphere thickened as Shu Kai closed the distance to Xiao Zhan, who stood tall, hands clasped behind his back, calm but unreadable. "You're really pushing yourself," Shu Kai said softly once he was close enough, glancing at the heavy costume Xiao Zhan wore. "Don't burn out." Several crew members subtly exchanged glances. The words were harmless, but the tone, that was something else. Xiao Zhan's lips curved into a polite smile. "I can handle it. But I'm surprised to see you here, Shu Kai." "I'm full of surprises," Shu Kai replied. Before anyone could pry further, the director called for a reset on the next scene. Xiao Zhan was due to shoot an emotionally intense confrontation sequence, and Shu Kai, rather than leaving, asked if he could watch. It was an unusual request, but somehow the director agreed, perhaps curious himself. As the cameras rolled, Xiao Zhan threw himself into the scene. His character, a war general betrayed by his closest ally, was supposed to radiate both rage and heartbreak. The performance was electrifying until Shu Kai shifted in his seat, his gaze fixed and unwavering. It was almost as if Shu Kai wasn't just watching, he was testing him. The scene ended, but as Xiao Zhan turned away from camera, his eyes briefly locked with Shu Kai's. Something passed between them, an unspoken challenge, maybe even an accusation, that made the hair on the back of several crew members' necks stand up. Later, during a short break, the real tension began. Shu Kai approached Xiao Zhan near the props table, lowering his voice but not enough to escape the ears of a few curious onlookers. "You didn't return my call," Shu Kai said plainly. Xiao Zhan didn't miss a beat. "I've been busy. You know how filming gets." "That's not the reason," Shu Kai countered, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. A silence stretched between them, heavy, loaded. One of the makeup artists, pretending to powder an extra, kept her eyes glued to the mirror, catching every flicker of emotion. "I think you should go," Xiao Zhan finally said, though his voice was even. Shu Kai leaned in just enough for only Xiao Zhan to hear. "You really want me to? Or are you afraid of what might come out if I stay?" That landed like a punch. Xiao Zhan's fingers tightened slightly around the rolled-up script in his hand. The assistant director, sensing the shift in atmosphere, approached to usher Shu Kai away, but Shu Kai waved him off. "Relax. I'm just visiting." His smile returned, too smooth, too calculated. The next twist came during lunch. Somehow, Shu Kai ended up seated at the same long table as Xiao Zhan, surrounded by crew members who tried to act casual but failed miserably. Conversations about lighting setups and costume adjustments felt hollow against the silent undercurrent between the two stars. Midway through the meal, Shu Kai reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. He slid it across the table toward Xiao Zhan. It was a silver pendant, simple, elegant, and unmistakably familiar to anyone who had followed their rumored history. Months ago, fans had spotted Shu Kai wearing a nearly identical one during a live stream. "You left this," Shu Kai said quietly. "Xiao Zhan didn't touch it." "I don't remember." "You do," Shu Kai replied, his voice low but firm. The pendant sat there like a ticking bomb. By the afternoon, the crew was buzzing. Some speculated Shu Kai had come to win Xiao Zhan back. Others whispered about an unresolved argument. Whatever the truth, the tension was impossible to ignore, and even the director seemed distracted. Things came to a head during the final scene of the day. Xiao Zhan's character had to collapse to his knees in grief after receiving devastating news. As the cameras rolled, Xiao Zhan delivered the performance with raw, almost too real emotion. His voice cracked, his shoulders trembled, there was an authenticity that stunned everyone on set. And then, just before the director yelled cut, Xiao Zhan's gaze drifted, just for a fraction of a second, toward Shu Kai, who was standing by the edge of the set. The scene ended. Silence hung in the air. It felt as though everyone had witnessed something deeply personal, something unscripted. When filming wrapped, Shu Kai finally rose to leave. He paused beside Xiao Zhan, who was removing his heavy costume. "Think about what I said," Shu Kai murmured. Xiao Zhan didn't respond, but his hand lingered briefly on the silver pendant before he set it aside. Shu Kai's footsteps echoed as he walked away, the crew watching him go. No one dared to ask Xiao Zhan what had just happened, but the energy on set had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. That night, blurry fan-taken photos of Shu Kai leaving the studio began circulating online. The hashtags exploded, #ShuKai on Xiao Zhan's set, #what did they talk about, and #silver pendant mystery. Neither star issued a statement, but in the days that followed, sharp-eyed fans noticed that Xiao Zhan had started wearing a new accessory, a thin silver chain, during interviews. Whether it was coincidence or a silent message, no one could say for sure. But one thing was clear, Shu Kai's unexpected visit had left a mark, both on the movie set and on the man at the center of it. And somewhere in Shanghai, Shu Kai was surely smiling. The afternoon sun slanted through the high studio windows, painting golden streaks across the bustling set. But beneath the usual chatter of lighting technicians and camera operators, there was an undeniable current of electricity. Shu Kai was still there. What had started as a surprise entrance had evolved into a slow-burning storm that no one could look away from. It wasn't just that Shu Kai was a superstar in his own right. It was the way he carried himself, moving through the set like he belonged there, greeting people with polite nods but never explaining exactly why he'd come. Every step, every glance, felt calculated. After lunch, Shu Kai made no attempt to blend into the background. Instead, he stood near the director's monitor, arms crossed, watching Xiao Zhan rehearse his next scene. The director tried to act unfazed, but there was a subtle stiffness in his shoulders. When Xiao Zhan finally walked past between takes, Shu Kai moved to intercept him. "You didn't eat much," Shu Kai observed, his voice low. "I wasn't hungry," Xiao Zhan replied, eyes on his script. "You never are when something's bothering you." Shu Kai tilted his head slightly, studying him. "You've changed your hair since the last time we met. Shorter." Xiao Zhan didn't look up. "It's for the role." There it was again, that unspoken subtext, the invisible thread connecting every word between them. One of the makeup artists, nervously pretending to tidy brushes, later swore she saw Xiao Zhan's hand clench slightly around his script before he walked away. By mid-afternoon, the set had slowed down. The director decided to run a complex tracking shot, giving Shu Kai more time to linger. Crew members tried not to stare, but he was magnetic in the way only someone completely confident in their presence could be. Then came the moment that no one could stop talking about. The scene required Xiao Zhan's character to kneel beside a co-star portraying a dying comrade. It was an emotional crescendo in the script, and Xiao Zhan was deep in preparation. The cameras rolled. Xiao Zhan sank to his knees, voice trembling as he delivered the lines. His co-star's hand went limp, and Xiao Zhan let out a guttural, grief-stricken cry. In the silence that followed, he looked up and there, just outside the camera's frame, was Shu Kai. Not looking at the scene. Not at the co-star. Just at Xiao Zhan. It was a gaze so intense it seemed to pull Xiao Zhan out of the character for the briefest second. His breath caught, not in the script, and then the director yelled cut. The director loved the take, but Xiao Zhan quickly stood, heading for the water table without a word. Shu Kai followed, his steps measured. You weren't acting just now, Shu Kai said quietly once they were away from the others. Xiao Zhan shot him a look. You shouldn't be here. Maybe not, Shu Kai admitted, but you didn't tell me to leave. Not really. Before Xiao Zhan could reply, a production assistant rushed over with a change in the schedule. But the assistant's hands trembled slightly, whether from the urgency of the update or the proximity to the brewing tension between the two men, no one could tell. During the next break, Shu Kai slipped away for a few minutes, only to reappear carrying 2 cups of coffee. Without saying a word, he set one beside Xiao Zhan, who was sitting on a folding chair reviewing his script. You still take it without sugar, right? Shu Kai asked. Xiao Zhan didn't drink it, but his fingers lingered on the warm paper cup. By now, the crew was fully invested. Cameramen exchanged knowing glances. Extras whispered theories. One lighting tech claimed she overheard Shu Kai asking Xiao Zhan if he'd kept the letters. What letters? No one knew, but the gossip machine roared to life. Things reached their peak when the director invited Shu Kai to watch a private playback of the day's best takes. Shu Kai agreed, but only if Xiao Zhan was there too. Inside the dimly lit screening room, it was just the 3 of them. The scene flickered on the monitor, Xiao Zhan's character weeping over his fallen comrade, raw emotion pouring from the screen. Shu Kai didn't look at the monitor. He watched Xiao Zhan. When the clip ended, the director asked for feedback. Shu Kai finally tore his gaze from Xiao Zhan to say, "It's perfect. He doesn't need another take." The words were praise, but they carried a weight that felt almost personal, like he wasn't just talking about the performance. After the screening, Shu Kai walked out first, but not before leaning toward Xiao Zhan. "I'm leaving now. Unless you want me to stay." Xiao Zhan didn't answer, but his eyes followed Shu Kai until the studio door closed behind him. The silence he left in his wake was almost deafening. That night, a few crew members gathered at a small noodle shop near the studio, replaying every moment of Shu Kai's visit. The pendant. The coffee. The way Xiao Zhan's usually unshakable focus seemed just slightly altered. By morning, social media was already ablaze with speculation. Someone had snapped a grainy photo from the lot, Shu Kai and Xiao Zhan standing close, their faces unreadable. The caption read, "Something happened today." And though neither man said a word publicly, the fans knew. Shu Kai's unexpected visit wasn't just a casual drop-in. It was a ripple in calm waters, one that hinted at something deeper, messier, and far more intriguing than anyone could have guessed. The on-set drama hadn't ended when he walked out that door. In fact, it had only just begun. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more exclusive drama-filled stories.